translation of the Vidui for you to each have, and I'll discuss what that means and how to use it and how to really make it more effective for yourselves. I really believe that if you listen to what I'm telling you today, and you take the Vidui packet I give you, and you use it carefully, it will literally transform your Yom Kippur. It will make a different Yom Kippur. Okay, that's what I believe, and I really feel very confident that was the case. So hopefully you'll gain a lot from this, what we're doing today.
Amen.
Okay, so now, first of all, some just basic principles we need to understand. Every mitzvah and every transgression has two parts, two aspects. There's a relationship with God aspect, and then there's the impact it has on us. So, for example, a person puts on tefillin. Okay, so they gain two things. They listen to Hashem, so they strengthen the relationship with Hashem, and whatever benefit there is in the tefillin, they gain that as well. I mean, we know God didn't say it for no reason. When you put tefillin on, you gain something. There's a metaphysical impact that has on you. So you listen to Hashem, you gained, and you gain from the tefillin itself. The person does a transgression, God forbid. So now they're lost twice, because first of all, they disobeyed Hashem, and second of all, Hashem said what he said for a reason. So then you got the benefit, the negative of that impact. Okay? So we want to do tshuva. That means we want to affect both of those things. We want to, first of all, repair our relationship with Hashem, and want to repair the damage we cause to ourselves and our neshama through disobeying Hashem. Okay? The first part, how do we repair our relationship with Hashem? That's returning to Hashem. That's called tshuva. That repairs our relationship with Hashem. But we also want to repair the damage we cause to our neshama. That's called kapara. Kapara is the spiritual fixing, the spiritual repair for what we did to ourselves when we did the transgression. That's kapara. Now, how do you get kapara? So you need to do two things. You need to do tshuva, and you need to articulate the tshuva process, which is called vidui. Okay, so you have two things. There's tshuva and there's vidui. Now, let's understand what is tshuva. So the Rambam tells us there are three steps to tshuva. What he calls azivas achet, to abandon the transgression. He says the Kabbalah lahaba, to accept for the future, to not do it again, and the harata, the regret of having done it. So three things: to abandon the transgression, to commit to never doing it again, and the regret for having done it in the first place. You do those three things, that's called tshuva. If you articulate those three things, you articulate that process. The abandoning the transgression, there's not much to articulate. You just stop doing it. But you say, I'll never do it again, and you say you regret it, and you mean that, of course. Now you've done vidui, and you get a kapara, and you repair the damage to your neshama. Okay, so that's the basic idea. So you have tshuva, which is abandon, commit, and regret. If you think it, you did tshuva. If you say it, you did vidui, and you get the kapara as well. That's good? That's clear so far? Okay. Now, what I think is very fascinating is we can do tshuva even without vidui, and it still accomplishes something. But the other way doesn't work. Vidui without tshuva accomplishes nothing. Now, there's a very simple, very clear case where you see this in the Gemara. The Gemara Kiddushin talks about a case of a totally evil person, unfortunately Jewish, a totally evil Jew, walks over to a Jewish woman with a ring in his hand. He says to her, behold, you are married to me, you are betrothed to me with this ring, on condition I'm totally righteous. But we know he's totally evil. So what would we think? We know that there's a rule in Judaism, you're allowed to attach conditions to many, many things. So a person could say, you can make a ridiculous condition. A person could say to a woman, you're married to me on condition that the Yankees win the game tonight. It sounds ridiculous, and it is ridiculous, but it actually works. So then we have to wait. If they win the game, they're married. If they don't, they're not married. You can make conditions, and it's silly to do, but you can do it. Here, he made a condition. On condition, I'm totally righteous. But we saw he was evil. So we would think to ourselves, nothing happened. We tell this lady, nothing happened. You can go get married to anyone you want right now, and don't worry about what just happened. But in fact, the Gemara says we have to be concerned. Perhaps it's a good condition. How? Why would it be? Is it possibly a good marriage? Because the Gemara says maybe he was maharher b'tshuva. He thought about tshuva. And if he thought about tshuva, then he changed his status from evil to good. But notice the Gemara did not say maybe he said vidui. Didn't say that. It said maybe he was maharher. He thought about doing tshuva. What do you see from this? That even someone who's totally evil, who thinks about the 3 steps of tshuva, abandon, commit, regret, he can change his status from being totally evil to being totally righteous. Now, what's crazy about it is, since he didn't say the words, his soul is battered up. Because he didn't do vidui, so he didn't get kapara, didn't get the spiritual repair. So he can change his status from evil to good to righteous, but his neshama is battered. Interesting situation. But you see from here that tshuva accomplishes a lot, even without vidui. And then vidui, of course, gets you the kapara, which you obviously want. Okay? So, good. Okay, now, let's think about the 3 steps of tshuva. Abandon, commit, and regret. So I often ask people, what's the hardest part? What do you think is the most difficult part of those 3 steps? What would you say? Abandon, commit for the future, and regret. What? Commit. That is by far the most common answer. To commit, I'll never ever do it again. And people say, how can I say that? It's very hard to say that. In fact, I disagree, and I think the most difficult step of them all is the regret. But yet, to appreciate this, we have to say, what is regret? Regret is that I realized what I did was destructive. Not merely that God said I shouldn't do it, that's bad enough, but it's actually destructive, it hurt me. If you really believe what you did was destructive, and it really hurt you, it shouldn't be so difficult to say, I won't continue hurting myself in the future. But the problem is, we don't really believe that. We have a hard time getting ourselves to believe that. And because we have a hard time believing that, and really regretting having done it, we often look at the mitzvot as simply arbitrary things God said. So I know I'm supposed to do it, but if I don't do it, then it doesn't hurt me. I just didn't obey God. But in fact, we did hurt ourselves by not doing the mitzvah or by doing the transgression. If you really believe and you really understand that it hurt you, then you have regret, and then it's not hard to say, I won't continue doing this bad, destructive behavior in the future. Okay? So, okay, good. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is a very curious halacha that the Rambam discusses. The Rambam says, he talks about a person who says vidui, but didn't resolve to let go of the transgression. So it means he's not really abandoning it for the future. So what would we think about that? Well, there's 3 steps. He's missing 1 step. So you figure it's nothing. But the Rambam doesn't say that. The Rambam says, he tells a story. He says it's like a guy who goes to the mikveh to become purified, but he holds in his hand a sheretz. It's an animal that causes him to become tameh. He dunks in the mikveh with the sheretz in his hand, and of course, the dunking in the mikveh doesn't help him. So I heard from Reb Yaakov Weinberg, that's Noach Weinberg's older brother. He asked, wait a minute, why is the Rambam telling me this whole story? Just say simple. There's 3 steps to tshuva. He's missing one of the 3 steps, therefore he accomplished absolutely nothing. So Reb Yaakov explained, the Rambam is telling this story because he didn't accomplish nothing. He accomplished something, even though it was missing a piece. Okay? So, now, at first glance, I would have thought, this would be like someone who goes to shul, the beginning of Sukkot, with a beautiful lulav, hadassim, and a ravos, but no esrog. You wouldn't say he has 3/4 of the mitzvah. You say he has nothing. You miss there's 4 parts, you need all 4 parts, otherwise you have nothing. So I would think it'd be like that. So Reb Yaakov says, not like that. It accomplishes something. Okay? And this is what Reb Yaakov called wanting to want. So he explained, imagine you talk to a smoker. You say to the smoker, you know, it's terrible to smoke. It's so bad for your health. You got to stop smoking. The smoker says, you know, you're right. I really want to stop smoking. You say, oh, great. So good, so you'll stop. I said, I can't stop. But you say, wait, but you said you want to stop. I know, I do want to stop. So stop, but I can't stop. So you say, well, that's funny. You want to, but you can't do it. But so the smoker says, you know what, you're right. If I really wanted to stop smoking, I would stop. So I don't really want to stop, but I want to stop. And Rav Yaakov explained, wanting to want is something important. And this is so important for us, because we often have things that are hard to let go of. Let's say character trait issues. Person has a hard time with anger. So he's going to think, how am I going to say I'll never get angry again? You know, it's ridiculous. It sounds silly. How can I mean that? That sounds like absurd to say such a thing. How can I say that? So, but you can say, I want to not get angry. That I can say. So that's something. And that's important to know, because we all have issues that we struggle with. And there's a tendency we have to give up on ourselves. We say, because I can't say I'll never do it again, so therefore I'm not even bother making any effort at all. No, that's not correct. You can make a lot of progress. Wanting to want is something. And think about the case for the guy at the mikveh. If he's trying to let go of that sheretz, by going to the mikveh and dunking in the water, even with the sheretz in his hand, maybe the next time he'll be closer to actually letting go of the sheretz. So if you want to want, and you say it, and you go through the process and try, then you can actually accomplish a lot. And hopefully, in the future, you'll actually come to be closer to wanting to want, and really wanting itself. Okay, now I tell you what I believe is the single most important idea in all of the laws of tshuva. The Rambam has 10 chapters for the laws of tshuva. It's all discussing one particular mitzvah. One mitzvah, which is, the Rambam discusses, really the mitzvah is the Vidui, the verbalization, and the tshuva is obviously the proper context to understand that. So Rambam discusses many, many important ideas in the laws of tshuva. I'm going to tell you right now what I believe is the single most important idea in all of the laws of tshuva. And it sounds very simple, but there's actually a very, very significant point to this idea. That tshuva can repair anything and anyone. And that's such an important idea, because we often give up on ourselves. So we often think to ourselves, in this area I can't change. I can't really regret it. I can't really make a difference. I can't really stop doing it in the future. That's not true. There's nothing that tshuva cannot fix, and there's no one that tshuva cannot fix. And the Rambam says this. I went through and I counted 10 separate places where the Rambam says this in the 10 chapters, because it's so central. The Rambam talks about a guy who transgressed his entire life, and literally on the last day of his life he does tshuva. The Rambam says he'll be forgiven. Or it talks about a guy whose entire life is about that. In fact, not just the Rambam, but the Gemara itself talks about someone whose entire life was involved in desire and chasing his desires. And then he finally got to a point where he felt so sick about it, he cried and cried and cried and died on the spot. And the Gemara told us afterwards that he accomplished the tshuva, and he was admitted to the world to come, even though previously a voice had come out from heaven saying he cannot ever do tshuva. Even when it said he can't, he really could, and he did. So that's a crucial point. Tshuva works for anything and anyone.
Reverse everything you said. You want to reverse everything?
You can reverse everything and everyone. Okay? The next point I want to make, and this is the Rambam spells this out. Tshuva is not, I'll tell you the way the Rambam says it. He says, don't say that tshuva is only for physical actions, but rather, just like we have to do tshuva for our physical actions, we also need to do tshuva for our character traits. Okay? He talks about anger or jealousy or desires. Okay? That's very interesting the way the Rambam says it. He doesn't just say, just like you have to do tshuva for actions, you also have to do tshuva for character traits. He says, don't say tshuva is only for actions, but rather, just like it's for actions, it's also for character traits. Why do you think the Rambam says it that way? It's almost like the Rambam would say, don't say 2 + 2 is 5. Really, it's 4. See, don't tell me what it isn't, tell me what it is. Just say 2 + 2 is 4. Just say, just like you have to do tshuva for actions, you have to do tshuva for character traits. Why tell me what it's not, and then tell me what it is? Why do you think he says that?
I think if it starts in your brain, then it will manifest itself into an action. But before it became an action, you manifested it inside your brain.
Okay, that's okay. I hear that. But again, I'm not sure that answers my question. I'm asking, the Rambam said, don't say tshuva is only for actions. Just like it's for actions, it's also for character traits. So why do you say that? Why do you say, don't say tshuva is just for actions?
Maybe you have a very negative attitude. It's not necessarily an action, but you've been looking at the world in a twisted way.
I mean, I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true, but yeah.
I think he's saying it's not enough to just stop the action. You have to fix the characters.
That's true. But so then say, just like there's true for actions, there's also true for character traits.
So you have to fix the character trait of the action.
You're right. But I'm asking, why does he say, don't say it's only for actions? Why say that and then tell me, just like it's for actions, also for character traits?
To avoid all confusion.
What?
To avoid all confusion.
If I say, just like it's for actions, it's also for character traits. That's pretty clear.
Is there something else that is for in addition to actions and character traits?
No, that's what it is. So keep in mind, this is a halacha. The Rambam is saying a halacha. don't say this. If the Rambam tells me, don't say this, then what could we be sure about? We want to say it. We all feel like saying that. Right? I think that's why you're saying it. Don't say that. We all feel like saying that. This is what I would call the difference between changing your actions and changing yourself. Because we all want to feel that way. Let's say someone, God forbid, he stole. So he understands he has to deal with that. He has to repair that, pay back the money, ask forgiveness from the person he stole from. That's simple, that's obvious. But what about the desire that led to the stealing? How about that? He says, no, that's my business. My desires are my own business. Or let's say a person got really angry and blew up and screamed at someone. He says, I know I have to say I'm sorry for that, because I screamed at the person, I embarrassed them, let's say, and caused them pain. But the fact that I'm an angry person, that's my own business. The Rambam says, no, don't say that. You just like you have to do tshuva for this, you have to do tshuva. And he says, don't say it, because we all want to say it. We all want to feel that I'm responsible for my actions, but not for myself, for who I am. The Rambam says, no, you are. That's wrong to say that. Okay. Can I tell you one more point, and then I'm going to pass out these Vidui sheets. The last point I want to say, and this is also, I think it's a well-known point, we can divide all the transgressions into two categories. This is commonly done. We're talking about between ourselves and God and ourselves and people. So the Rambam tells us, you can do tshuva for yourself between you and God. It's all in your hands to do tshuva for that. But if you hurt another person, and you want to do tshuva for that, for hurting another person, you also have to get forgiveness from that person. Of course, you have to make restitution. If you stole something, obviously, you have to pay back what you stole. But even if you pay back the money, you also have to get his forgiveness. If I hurt someone, I embarrassed someone, I damaged someone, God forbid, in any way, I have to get forgiveness from that person. And there's a whole process you have to go through to get that forgiveness. Now, this is a bit scary because sometimes we know who we hurt, but sometimes we don't know who we hurt. Let's imagine some friends are sitting around. One person makes a joke at the expense of someone else. And everyone laughs. Even the guy that was made fun of, he laughs too. And then I think he made a very funny joke. But really the guy that was the recipient of the joke, he was embarrassed. He didn't want to say he was embarrassed because he didn't want to show that. And meanwhile, the guy hurt him. But he doesn't know he hurt him. So he's not going to ask him for forgiveness necessarily because he doesn't know he hurt him. And that could easily happen. You could so easily do something that hurts another person, and you don't know you hurt the person, and you're not going to ask for forgiveness. And that's scary, because we all can have that situation. Therefore, there's a very beautiful idea that the Jewish people have adopted, where people all say, before Yom Kippur begins, we forgive anyone who may have hurt us. Even if they didn't ask us for forgiveness. The very beautiful idea is a prayer that's said before Kol Nidre, called Tefillah Zaka. It's usually said right before Kol Nidre, just before the beginning of Yom Kippur. And there's a paragraph in that prayer where we say, and Hashem, anyone that may have hurt me, I'm forgiving them. And that way they shouldn't be hurt on my account. And of course, we hope that just like we are being generous and magnanimous and forgiving to other people, hopefully anyone that we may have hurt is also hopefully going to say that prayer also and forgive us. Right? So that's a very important prayer to say. Okay? And that is included in what I'm going to pass out right now. On Yom Kippur, I'm going through the Vidui, and I'm saying the words of the Vidui, and then besides that I have my list. I have a list of things that are personal to me. Right? And I'm going back and forth between the Vidui and what's personal to me. And also I thought, well, this is kind of crazy. Why don't I put them together? So I decided that I'm going to do that. And I did it. And I made my own translation of the Vidui, but I would tell you, perhaps the most valuable part of this handout is not the translation, it's the spaces between the lines. Because that's where you can put your own personal issues in. If you do that, you'll have made your own personal Vidui that you can then say on Yom Kippur. Now, first of all, just be aware, this is the entire Vidui from when you finish your silent prayer on Yom Kippur, and you switch to the Vidui, it's the entire Vidui from beginning to the end, to literally we take it 3 steps backwards. So the entire, you can just close your Makser at that point, your Yom Kippur prayer book, close it, and you can finish the entire Vidui from here. All the words are here, and I put my own translation. I tried to make it very simple and straightforward, so to make it more understandable. But like I said, the real value is the space between. That's where you should put your own personal issues. So I have 2 recommendations for what you should do. First of all, take a pencil, not a pen, a pencil, and write things in the spaces there. Second of all, my recommendation is don't put your name on this. Because if you misplace it, you don't want someone else looking at this. If you write your things in, you put your name on it, okay, what the worst will be, some will say, wow, this guy did this and this and this, but it wasn't, you don't know who you are. So don't put your name on it, and put it with a pencil between there. Okay? Now, I'll give you some examples of how you do that. Look at the beginning part. So you said, we made ourselves guilty. We knew or should have known these things were wrong when we did them. Now, that's very possible that applies to you. There may be things you did where even when you did it, you knew it was wrong. If that's the case, then write in the specific examples in pencil that's relevant to you. And then when you say it on Yom Kippur, you'll say those examples. Next one. We were ingrates and traitors. We didn't appreciate the good that people did for us. So if that was relevant for you, write in the specific examples in that section. Or the next one, we didn't respect the ownership of other people. We took things we didn't deserve. We also robbed from God by wasting our potential. If that's relevant for you, put that in. Now, I'm sure that many examples on this on the whole Vidui are not relevant to you. Thank God we didn't do many of the things on these sheets. So that's fine. You don't need to fill in every space. If it wasn't relevant to you, you didn't do it, say thank God. You're still going to say the category. You're still going to say the Hebrew, because notice that everything is said in the plural. We're saying this not just for ourselves, we're saying it on behalf of the whole Jewish people. So we're saying, we made ourselves guilty. We were ingrates. We didn't respect. That's us. And of course, some people in the Jewish world, unfortunately, did all the transgressions that are here. So you want to say everything in terms of, but if it's nothing specific to you, then of course, don't put it in there. Okay, now I mentioned before, this paragraph where you forgive people, that's on the back. The very back page, on the bottom, there's Hebrew and English. Now, by the way, the Vidui, it's not really a prayer. It's more of a verbalization of the Shua process. And therefore, you should say it in the way that's most effective for you. And therefore, if you understand English much better than you understand Hebrew, say it in English. You don't need to say it in Hebrew. It's not a prayer where you need to say it in Hebrew. And that's certainly true of here, this forgiving of people. You look at the paragraph and you're basically saying, in case someone hurt me and they didn't ask for my forgiveness, I'm still forgiving them. And it's a wonderful thing to say, because you're taking the burden off of all those other people. And it makes you not petty. It makes you a magnanimous, generous, forgiving person, which is what we all want to be. And like I said, hopefully the person that you may have hurt will also say those words. But you're not doing it only for that. You're saying it because you want to be a generous person. You want to be a forgiving person. You don't want to be a person who's just always walking about the grudges and I'm angry at that person. Even when you forgive people, it lightens your own load. You feel better yourself. because then you can go to the person and have a good relationship again, because it's behind you now. No one wants to have this clouding their relationships. Okay, so it's a very beautiful thing. Like I said, it's traditionally said right before Kol Nidre, the beginning of Yom Kippur. If for some reason you didn't say it then, say it as soon as you remember it. Okay, and you want to just do it, make sure you say it. You can even say it now, but traditionally it's said right before Yom Kippur begins. Okay, I would also recommend that you should make a strategy with the Vidui. So there are actually 11 times we're going to say the Vidui. We say it once before Yom Kippur begins. We say it after the mincha, before the final meal, before the fast. And then we're going to say it at night. I'm going to say it in the morning, then the second prayer in the morning, then the mincha prayer in the morning, in the afternoon, and then in the ne'ilah, the final prayer. There are 5 prayers on Yom Kippur, and we say it twice. That's why it's 11 times altogether. Once before Yom Kippur, and 10 times. Of those 10 you say on Yom Kippur, 5 are said personally, quietly, and 5 are said communally. The ones that are said communally, you don't have a lot of time. You'll be saying it pretty quickly to keep up with the whole congregation. So the 5 you have your own private ones, that's where you can really be personal. The most time you'll have is the first 3. The night one, the morning one, the Shachrit, and Musaf. That's where you should make time, and perhaps take only part of the Vidui and put an emphasis on that, and then the next one, do that one more quickly and put an emphasis on the next part. But strategize and work it out. You'll have 3 times where you can really say it with a real intensity and a real focus. You want to make sure you do that. Now, I'll tell you a practical strategy. Because oftentimes people feel, there's a lot of things I'm doing tshuva for, but I want to walk away with something tangible in my hands, that I know that I'm going to be different in some basic, specific way. So I would suggest the following. Every human being has 3 basic relationships. Every one of us has a relationship with God, people, and self. Every human being has that. God, people, and self. So I would recommend find some area within each of those 3 relationships to make a change in. Better off making a small change that's more likely to happen than a big change that may not happen. Make a small change. And when you do that, then you walk away from Yom Kippur with something tangible, which for sure will be different in these 3 areas, in all 3 of my relationships. I'll give you an example of something that I myself did many years ago and made a tremendous difference for me. It was a small thing, but it touched on a big area, and it was very, very helpful. I found that when I was giving tzedakah, people would come up to you and ask you for tzedakah. I was oftentimes, some people are very aggressive, and it's not the most pleasant interaction. So I found I was almost kind of just giving it to them and not really dealing with them or relating to them. So I decided to myself, there's no point. Once I'm giving the tzedakah, I might as well make it a positive interaction. So I said to myself, I have to say at least 1 word. So I say, Tia Bari, be healthy, or Hatzlacha, you be successful, or Shalom, some word. And I found by saying even 1 word, it forces you to relate to that person as a human being. And it changed my entire relationship to that mitzvah. And I did that when I was a bacher, and I continue doing it till today. That was an example of something. It was a small thing, which I knew I could do, and it changed my whole relationship to that mitzvah. That was in terms of my relationship towards people. Okay, so to try to think about that. Another piece of advice I'll give you, when people have very, very big things that they feel, I can't really do tshuva for this. It's just too big, it's too ingrained in me, it's too much part of my nature, I can't do tshuva for that. So what do you do? So I give you 3 techniques. This is not my techniques, this is all from classical Jewish sources. Technique number 1 is what I have sort of cute little names to remember this. I call it Salami, awareness, and trigger. Okay? So salami is, let's say there's an area where it's too big. I just know I can't do it. But find some slice. Find some piece of that big area that you'll make a change in. Okay? Awareness would be saying, I'm not necessarily committing myself to make a change, even in a piece of it, but I'm going to keep track of how often I slip in this area. And the trigger is you do some small thing that touches on that whole area. Okay, I'll give you an example of all three of them. So, most people's favorite example of a very hard thing to do tshuva for is Lashon Hara. It's so hard, to never ever say Lashon Hara again. It's so hard to say that. That's a very common example people will say. Okay, so how would you do those three techniques for Lashon Hara? So I'll find a slice of it. I could say, let's say, I'll be super careful in the base medrash, never to say Lashon Hara. Okay? Or I'll be super careful on Shabbat, never to say Lashon Hara. Or I'll be very, very careful to never say Lashon Hara about my parents, let's say. So I can do a piece of it. Does that mean I'm allowed to say Lashon Hara in other situations? Of course not. But I'm being particularly careful in this one area, either by time, by location, by person. And that's a way to show myself that I can make progress, and then hopefully I can continue making progress. But even if I don't, I made progress in this area. That's one example. That's the salami part. How about awareness? So I'll say to myself, okay, I'll just keep track. How many times do I speak Lashon Hara? Every day or every week? So let's say 1 week, a person spoke Lashon Hara 15 times. The next week he spoke Lashon Hara 12 times. Okay, it's not good to say 12 times, but it's better than 15. And maybe the next time he spoke Lashon Hara 7 times. Still not good to say 7 times, but it's a lot better than 15 and 12. So keep track of it. That's another technique. That's the awareness part. And the third is trigger. So what would an example of that be? Let's say I'll read one halacha about Lashon Hara. One of the principles within the halachot. Or once a day, I'll write down how will my life be better if I'm careful to not speak Lashon Hara. Or once a day, I'll ask someone, what do you find helps you to be more careful in Lashon Hara? I'll write it down. And that will touch on this area. So those are 3 techniques. So salami, taking a piece of it. Awareness, being just aware of what you're doing, keeping track. And trigger, you do something that touches on the whole area. And that's a way to even the most huge area, the biggest area you can imagine, we can all make some progress on. Okay? I'm going to close by telling you a very beautiful point, which people often are surprised about. The Gemara tells us that Yom Kippur was one of the very happiest days of the entire year. People often are dreading Yom Kippur. Like, oh my gosh. Like, oh, just be so happy when it's finally over, finally behind me. That's not the way you should feel about it. It's an incredible opportunity. Now, it's true, it's a bit uncomfortable to confront areas where we made mistakes. It's not so comfortable to feel that way, to be aware of that. But now, you're actually doing something about it. I mean, we all make mistakes. No one doesn't make mistakes. So therefore, and I'm making progress. I'm going to be a better person than I was before. What an incredible situation. So it's a very happy day. It's a day that you just, the commentaries talk about it as like we're all like angels. Like there was an expression that people say that on Yom Kippur, you don't even feel like eating because you're an angel. So therefore, you just like transcend your physical nature to some degree. So it's a wonderful thing. Yom Kippur is an amazing opportunity. It's a happy day. You should feel good about it, and you should make progress on it. Hopefully, now the key with this is you got to use this and prepare it between now and Wednesday night. So as you do that, take the pencil, write down your specific things, and then on the actual day itself, when you say the Vidui, you'll make a personalized Vidui, and you'll be able to make it in a way that's really meaningful to you, and be incredible, and hopefully we'll all have an amazing, amazing Yom Kippur, and an amazing year afterwards.